Um, can you see that? Yeah, good. Yeah, so let's get started maybe a little bit of how this has been contextualized and how this is framed. So yeah, maybe upfront, this is quite a strategic view on knowledge management, but it gives you a good starting point to kind of think about how knowledge actually comes into your project. So one of the kind of key authors in this, or he is certainly one of the lead authors in terms of literature contribution in knowledge management, are basically Scheimer, and as well later works of Groff and Jones was as well quite applicable to this. So just to be clear, the 7 strategic knowledge levers were kind of Scheimer's work in 2001, but then the Groff and Jones paper goes a little bit in how you can apply that and what happens in the project environment. So, and the levers here are kind of customer knowledge. So this is, yeah, what is that? Is that any insights? What could be customer knowledge?
Maybe customer feedback or survey data.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, knowing your customer or knowing what the customer wants. That goes even in as sophisticated notions as making the understanding, you know, what lifestyle the customer wants, and then placing products, you know, that fit into that lifestyle. So it's as well the Elon Musk phenomena. Yeah, so he told you why you too should have an electric car and should have a fancy battery in your house, you know, to save energy on the planet. So that's kind of knowledge, but Achu, you are spot on. So it's normally associated with knowing about the customer. Yeah, knowledge in people is kind of the knowledge that is within your team, but as well within you. Knowledge in products and services. What is that? Oh, I had a comment. Yeah, what the customer needs before they ask for it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so this is actually spot on. So customer needs, yeah, or client needs. This is normally how we know this from the project management. Oh, I've jumped again. How did I do that? Yeah. Then what is the knowledge in products and services?
Something related to their supply chain ecosystem, like their operations, their production, life cycles.
Yeah, I like that. So the back of the shop, yeah, if you want, yeah. So how it's made, yeah, what comes together, and so on. But yeah, Achu, what about the other side? The front end of the shop.
So the retailer's perspective, like distributors, retailers.
Yeah. Okay, you're still supply. So I was just thinking, you know, it's as well about how the product is used, or you know, services. You know, like in a lot of products like mobiles, we know that already there are regular updates, right? So you are still kind of leading the product or service through its life cycle and operations. Yeah.
I think it's also about with COVID in place now, and since we have in a lot of stores, we have the click and collect option, or the so with that, in terms of that, the services sector here plays a very important role, because I recently had a problem with an order. So my laptop, the charger was not working, because of which I could not really access important documents in my laptop for a couple of days. I had to borrow my friend's laptop, and I had to work on that until then. I had contacted my the laptop company, And they told me that if you want the charger to be delivered, it'll take around 4 to 6 weeks, which I which I thought wasn't really, because at this peak time when the customers really need uh, want to make sure that the requirements have been met, and when the company responds in such a way to the customer's requirements, I think that might lead to a bit of, so maybe next time onwards, if I have to buy a laptop, or I wouldn't buy it from that specific company or brand. I would instead prefer buying it from someone who has a faster, provides faster service, or
commonly available. Yeah.
yeah. So then later I could finally identify that the problem was with the power cord of my charger and not the charger entirely. So so yeah, I had ordered the power cord from JBI-Fi recently. So I just had that saved me a lot of money. Otherwise I was planning of getting a universal charger instead for that.
Yeah, there we have probably the hybrid. So that is probably still the customer knowledge, but combined with the service. Yeah, and but I think that is as well what I implied by the services to a degree. And I think you have picked up on this and just extended it further. So this kind of product lifelong customer service, yeah, that kind of stills in there. It's certainly a new part, yeah. So the hybrid of the two. Yeah, good example. What could be the knowledge in processes? What could that be about? Why do we do processes? Have we discussed it? I don't know. In OPM 4002, I think we had that a few times. If we turn the project lifecycle around, but what is a good thing with knowledge and processes?
Kind of processes do you mean? What processes of the business, or like how the business functions, or?
Yeah, good. So those are levers, right? So knowledge and processes. So the idea here is why do we do things in processes? What's the benefit of a process?
A process is basically something you do chronologically to get to something. So if you put knowledge in a process, you basically are putting it in a scheme that you could transfer to other people, and they could work on this process and achieve the same goal.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, so you put it quite rightly. So the process is kind of I think staggering or like an ordering of focus elements. Yeah, so if you take a phase or a stage model, right, then in that stage you are just focusing on a particular activity. So for example, in our project life cycle, this could be on initiating the project. And then the focus in that process stage is really just to get that right. So, and then by having a process model like that, you can actually repeat it because the focus elements are the same. So good.
It's like working in modularity. Yeah. It's like working in modularity, I'd say, in a modular way, copying the process every single time.
Yeah, good. Modularity implies another flexibility, which you may have in a process too, that you can go back and forth and that there may be iterative elements. So I think modularity is about interfaces, right? So, which, well, if you combine it, it's very good. Yeah. Okay. So the fifth is organizational memory. What is that? So according to my sense making literature from the project social systems, you should know what a memory is, right? Individual memory. What is organizational memory?
I think organizational memory is more about how the organization stores all the data and the information or the required um, uh, like for instance, if there's a particular client that they have been working for, and if they have if they come across a different project for the same client, however, if some tasks are repetitive or require similar actions to be taken, instead of working on them all over again, if you have it stored with you already, like the past information when you were working with the same client, if you have it stored with you already, the same tools or the same process, you can just implement it again for the new project. You don't have to work on it all over again. So I think
Yeah,
that
so procedures, right?
yes.
So you named them all. Yeah, so procedures or kind of norms, or I think Archie put as well, previous documents or templates, right? Or
Yeah.
policies.
Isn't
Yeah,
it like
that
artifacts, just like the assignment we had to do? Is it like putting
yeah.
the knowledge of the organization and specific artifacts and to pass them on, to pass this knowledge or pass this sense of in the project, within the project?
Yeah. So you're right. It can be artifacts. It can be now. If you go fully into that sphere, you could say as well, it's how to use those artifacts. Yeah. So there
Yeah,
may be a
yeah.
certain method to it. Yeah, and or expected how you use those. Yeah, and it could be as well symbolic things. Yeah. So yeah. What is a good? Okay, I jump into my indigenous project. Yeah, so before you do business, you need to arrive on the land. Yeah, so and to do so, to really be welcome, there's a smoke ceremony required. Yeah, and then you have to kind of symbolically do something together, and then you can start talking. Oh, I hope this isn't too loud outside. I think somebody has just started taking our kind of window tree art. Is that okay, sound-wise? Okay.
We can't
Okay.
hear anything actually. Over.
Oh, super. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so if you hear noise, just be aware. Somebody is axing down our tree next door. Yeah, but so for organizational memory, this is exactly where it comes in. So it's the knowledge artifacts, objects, but as well how you actually share knowledge and how you maybe embrace hierarchies or not. Yeah, so there may be an order how to do it. Or it may be very flat, so problems are brought to the forefront and then everybody works together on it. Yeah, so it can be that too. But yeah, so the association normally with the memory is historical. Yeah, so how you got where you are, and then this is kind of setting the precedence. Yeah, or what I mentioned, four structures. Yeah, but that is a Heideggerian term. It's again recognizing what people have been exposed to, that experiences as well as structuring element for the future or how you view the future. Yeah. Okay, then we had, yeah, and by the way, organizational memory is quite interesting. So in management, we do the step, yeah, so to step up from individual memory to the cumulative, yeah, memory and what's manifested in that organization, which is your organizational memory. But normally associated, and you will see that as well in my case studies, with the codification. So really written down or procedures in place or spatial setup. Yeah, so first design team, then behind this is the production factory, and you have to physically work through it to get there. So this is normally the manifestation. What is knowledge in relationships? That's an odd one, right? Knowledge in relationships?
It's something more about stakeholder analysis or the way they communicate or communication methods.
Yeah. Spot on. It's our project management bread and butter. Yeah, so understanding how different parties relate to our project or stakeholder management, or as well Raki, how people want to be involved. And it's as well actually just person to person. If you have a contract with somebody, can you trust that? Yeah, there's a contractual relationship, but then there's as well a personal relationship. So yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Other examples maybe around this? Okay, now the big question, what are knowledge assets? What do you think a knowledge asset is?
I'm not quite sure, but is it related to explicit and tacit knowledge?
Yeah, can be. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, this is probably true for all these categories. Yeah, so there could be always tacit and well, explicit element, yeah, and maybe a lot of implicit ones. But when you think of an asset, what do you associate with it? What are assets?
So whoever transfers this knowledge from in the process are the knowledge assets. For example, the stakeholders for a project manager, the previous project manager is a knowledge asset for the current project, something like that.
Oh, okay. So that is, I see where you're coming from, and I think in this framing, this is actually a smart way of framing it. But knowledge assets are normally okay. Let's go into that example. Yeah. So the previous project manager may become the extension, yeah, to your physical knowledge asset or the knowledge asset generated, if they, for example, help you in developing the model of how you want to deliver the future submarine program. Yeah. So if you have now the program model, yeah, and you map out, okay, here are the different parties. Contractually, we need to set it up this way. With the suppliers, it's clear we need a platform approach and something like that. And you map that all out. The previous project manager comes in and says like, yeah, this has worked on other projects, and refines this with you, and you submit this planning document, yeah, as your asset. Then, and by the way, this is then as well a boundary object from one process, but this goes too far. But this would be then a knowledge asset. Yeah, so it's the artifact or the asset generated to steer the later project as an orientation item. Yeah.
Robert, how is that different to organizational memory?
Yeah, this is a good question. What's the difference? So what is organizational memory? I mean, Lynn, sorry, I didn't want to frame you there. This was more a question of time, right? So one is memory as in past, yeah, and knowledge asset is normally, well, so it's normally the combination of knowledge products and knowledge assets that is used in that terminology. But if you look at the debate, asset is really live, yeah, for what generates the value. And this is why I asked what is an asset definition. So asset is normally something calculated that you use to capitalize on. Yeah, but if you then go that broadly, then asset is your machines, your people. You are really back to the notion of capitalization definition of assets. Yeah, and then knowledge assets, Achu would be even correct. So I shouldn't have even done the loop with a project manager of the previous project. But Skymore defines it slightly different. So he sees this as an active element that contributes to utilize what you are now working on. But you're right, organizational memory will overlap. Or the past knowledge assets will be probably part of what constitutes a new knowledge asset. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Okay, well, we have as well examples later. So with my either with a Volvo example or another example. Yeah, so how does it actually kind of unfold? And by the way, we had a lot of those. I show you as well. Oh, that reminds me, I have to update that slide deck because I've added it here a lot. So when it comes to integrated knowledge management cycle, the simplified notion is kind of you have the knowledge and capture or creation of knowledge, then you assess it, and then you, if it's suitable or is assessed as appropriate or fit for purpose, right, then you are sharing and disseminating it. And in the dissemination, you can kind of focus on the elements that are basically relevant, which means you can actually contextualize it. And that is a knowledge acquisition and application. And from here, you can again update what you kind of had in the knowledge capture before. Now, this is one integrated knowledge management cycle. And I was a little bit reluctant with this one. There's as well an evolution cycle, so which recognizes that when it comes to knowledge, there is a exploration element. So maybe we go around both ways. So on one side, we have the generative variation, scanning, recombination, yeah. So if you go this way, you have internal selection, evaluation, and legitimization. So you try something new out, yeah? So you recombine your old ideas with maybe new ideas, and you explore if it works, and you see if it does the purpose, and ultimately leading to the legitimization. So people say like, yep, this is a good solution. And this allows you then to replicate, share, transfer, or adaptive variations or problem solving, yeah. So that is how to exploit it, and the other, and this allows you then again to think about how you can routinize or enact or retain this, and then there's the other combination. So you scan it, and instead of doing something new, you go the old way. So you go directly to retention if you deem something as not fit. So I guess Siobhan was quite keen on this because this is very close to the one that she has in the case study in another example. In reality, it's a little bit more complicated. And to just show you a brief insight. So there are even more in some of the, so this is the ones that we had as well in the paper, recognizing here that Hoffman and Boyle wasn't included in our study, but they are different models. But so either you start with a building knowledge, so you start with exploration and finding out, or you kind of connect to previous practice. And this as well, again, a little bit from the idea the same. You try to capture or define what you need or acquire if you're buying in, and or generate, yeah. And then it's normally a question of steering towards the use. And in some cases, this is like more driven from information science terminologies. And sometimes this is more driven from a scientific or engineering perspective. And the Boyle retaining, or I've copied the one out that, okay, the one in the slides at the beginning is actually the commercial one or business school one, where it's about commodification and as well exploitation. So that's a slightly different notion, but it's again, the idea is more or less the same driver. But having said that, so in detail application, they are quite different. Yeah. So why did we look at those process models? This is as well to kind of see how those feed into our project knowledge management. And here, a word of warning. I know from experience. Yeah, can anybody tell me what you see here? Well, it's kind of written down here. So this is an old picture. I think it was from the Argus, yeah, Cape Argus newspaper, and it was like a white shark basically following kayaker, and the big problem here was I think it was actually people shouting to him. I've forgotten actually what the story was, but there's a famous boulevard where you kind of look down on this ocean piece, and this photo was shot from this road just before Norderhoek. And basically all the tourists could see there was a massive white shark behind the kayaker, but the canoe wasn't aware till the people came actually through to him with a shouting, and he was followed by a big white shark. So, and I guess the idea here is, as well in projects, it's, you've probably heard it a lot in this course, but we are not great in learning from kind of previous projects, and they're kind of structured domains that actually hinder a little bit these wonderful process and life cycle models. But let's have a look. So if we are actually open to it, it's not so much like being followed by a white shark, because if you then come to a learning culture, yeah, then it's more like a discovery of a very gentle giant, yeah. And I guess that is as well what Google Scholar always writes on the web page, right? Standing on the shoulders of giants. Yeah, so the previous knowledge is here, of course, the key. Yeah. Okay, so what is project knowledge management? So for that, we need first a rough definition of what knowledge management is. So here, knowledge management strategies focus on the knowledge, business areas or processes, and the end results, and the use as well of that. So it's tools, techniques, strategies to retain, analyze, organize, and share business expertise. So you notice this is another one of those processes. And to have meaning, knowledge must be continuously recreated, reconstituted through dynamic, interactive, and social network activity. So that the reconstitution was as well what I talked about, the legitimacy. Yeah. So, and in a project, we have a special condition. Normally in companies, there is a established track record. And by the way, don't get me wrong, in projects we have that often as well. There are norms and expectations from the organizational memory, but we have a different level of legitimizing. So actually project space is innovation space. And depending on how embedded your projects are in a company culture, this will be actually relatively flexible to slightly constrained. Yeah, so this is kind of, in a project, you have a lot more freedom here. And project management, just to remind us, is the functions of traditional project management include the objective or purpose, right? So this is direction to focus the knowledge, then the time frame, budget, resources, as well as performance requirements. But this is a relatively old definition, right? So we have now as well the value, so which brings the phronesis in. And project knowledge management was kind of the combination. So Hanish kind of defined that that knowledge management in project situations, and those link between the principles, knowledge management, and project management together. Yeah, so the interface between project management and knowledge management is basically what makes project knowledge management concept. So why did that matter so much? Well, we had that already because it entails the application of principles and processes designed to make relevant knowledge available to the project team, and as well activities that define knowledge in the project context. So here again, another kind of process, here creation, administration, dissemination, utilization of knowledge. And that is more an information systems definition. So that seems to be a variant where we think more of a kind of archival structure and a phone book maybe of linking the right people in. Yeah. Okay, So why do we spend so much time on kind of even making this more complicated? The quick answer is because in projects we make it a lot more complicated. So first of all, we have an increasing knowledge intensity. Yeah, you too. Well, now we are meeting virtually, right, through Zoom, and that is just one element to keep it interesting, right? Then at the same time, I share a lot of digital content, so you need to kind of trace this and kind of follow up to make sense of that, right, and try to understand it. So, and this is exactly the issue that we have in a project management setup. So on one side, you have a permanent organization, maybe departments and divisions that can support projects. Yeah, so this is great because this knowledge is kind of permanent and can be supported or can be supporting your project. So, but then you have the intra-project knowledge, yeah, and this is the knowledge within the project. Then you have parallel to this, the knowledge between projects in parallel, right? So, for example, Raf works on project A, and Lynn works on project B. Yeah, then they may face similar issues, but in reality, they're in their own project team. So the sharing between those two to learn from each other is actually something that has to be organized. And depending on your company setup, it's not necessarily likely that that is the default thing. Yeah. So normally in companies, we try to do that with an office day, you know, where you kind of share how your progress is going on. So this could be a meeting. If they're better, then it's maybe like something like a community of practice where you talk about the progress of your projects and kind of share what worked, what didn't, or something like that. And if it goes in the direction of good, then you normally have kind of a notion of both knowledge networks, but as well kind of expert fora that you can kind of go in. But if this is not embedded in a big company, then this is normally basically engaging with universities and education elements outside or with professional networks, right? And that gets quite quickly. You notice here already, I have a lot of different organization forms there that replicate support of a permanent organization. Yeah. Now that was all still in one time element. Yeah. So that could be all now, but how can those projects actually inform future projects? And that's the next level. So there you have, of course, knowledge from upstream projects. So how can, if we are on the project now, how can we learn from the past one? And that knowledge needs to be manifested too, right? And here, I guess the space is traditionally sort of as lessons learned from the past project, but depending on how well this is done, and if it's done at all, this may not be as applicable for future projects. So it's actually a little bit more tricky than just writing lessons up to make it a meaningful archive for future projects. And actually, you met as well my PhD student, Jeff. So he's actually looking at that, how mega projects inform future mega projects, and what is actually reused from the projects in future projects to do those projects. Yeah, and it's a very strange topic. So the intuitional assumptions that there would be a clean handover is actually not there. So it's often manifested in the companies at Bitfold that reuse templates and things like that, as you would expect. And then there are external players like consultancies that seem to be very influential in setting templates. So again, not a surprise. But if you look at the operationalization, it's a huge discontinuity of lessons learned that should really be captured. Yeah. And having said all this, so then there's as well the link back 5, right, to the permanent organization that should be there and support all that. But yeah, as you have noticed, we have talked now about this for quite a while, and it means these levels are all distinct levels, right? Yeah, and any question to this kind of I'm picking, or okay. So yeah, it should be it should make intuitively sense for project managers. Why project knowledge management? Well, I've mentioned it already. It's kind of about sharing knowledge, ideas to create value-added products or services. And knowledge will be used for developing new knowledge, ideas, and insights. So some of the key objectives was avoiding duplication of work, learning by repetition, and promoting innovation, harmonizing of methods and standardization, and allocating resources. So yeah, by the way, this is the standardization is normally as well nowadays going more towards softwares and visualization. It's a big topic. Okay, that was a quick run to actually look at this in a little bit more detail. Okay, I have now the actual topic heading, the knowledge ecosystem. And just to ease you into this element, so what is actually a knowledge ecosystem? Did you have that before?
I haven't. Not sure about others.
Okay, let's do the definition first and then go back to my beautiful pictures. So according to the Australian standard, it's an ecosystem is characterized by dynamic relationships, connected networks, internal process, content, and technology. An ecosystem does not follow a traditional hierarchical model, so it's a different way of organizing. Yeah? Knowledge ecosystem uses this complex environment to share, build on, and apply knowledge. Okay. Now the question, I've given you here an example already, but are you part of a project or knowledge ecosystem?
Yes, of course, everyone. I think everyone is, because we're part of Monash's organization, basically, or the project management, probably project management team.
Yeah.
And then we create individual networks in this like team of project management students that share the knowledge around this.
Yes. Okay, Ralph, that was super. So you are quite right. So for example, we can use the organization of Monash. Yeah, within Monash, you are part of a Master of Project Management Leadership. Yeah, and within that, you are part of a project team. And this is kind of the formal organization. And then I didn't quite catch if that was informal. You mentioned as well, then you have your own personal network. So that could be informal or it could be personal. So for example, it could be formal or informal. So for example, informal is you may know Achu, yeah, but then you could be as well part of the society Student Formula One, yeah, as an example, yeah. So that would be then another formal network connected to you and whose knowledge you as a boundary spanner, yeah, between the team and these other formal student society could bring knowledge in, or you have a whole network to ask questions, and all those guys in that society could help you. Yeah, and that doesn't all have to be in Monash. That could be as well, I don't know, professional association, the AIPM, for example, or PMI, yeah, whatever you prefer, yeah, not to advertise too much. Yeah, but this could be an external network, and they could give you as well support. Or Rashi's example, yeah, your grandparents, yeah, so that may have experience and wisdom for you, yeah. So they could be the extension there with the family organization, yeah. And so on, yeah. Okay, so super example. Yeah, does that make sense as a definition? Okay, assuming that you all agree, this is as well a good visualization. Well, I have to admit that there was a little bit, I kind of wanted to find an ecosystem visualized project management article. So this is the first one that I found. So kind of Vivioria, Zhang, and Schmidt, and Zhang has done a lot in this area. Yeah, so they had here the knowledge flows within the ecosystem. So you can see as well that they kind of looked at senior leaders and leaders in the PMO, how they actually influence the flow, and they recognized already that the more hierarchical it is, or the more power you have, the more the politics emerge as well. And then that kind of the individual, so you may be part of networks, organizational initiatives, cultures of empowerment, temporality. So this is a project, right? So where you try to run something. And those are then again in a network with other teams or projects. And again, here in their example, they analyzed, and that doesn't mean the team members are not connected. They just focused basically on the leaders rather than the team members. And again, the teams kind of are then connected in the organization as well, and report and feed to the kind of permanent organization goals and so on. Yeah. Now, and that was an inside perspective. And then recently, where this is as well in the same paper, was just attributed to another paper, was the influence as well from the external and internal elements. So here they see as well, you know, the network basically extending beyond maybe, you know, what Raf gave as a Monash example, right? It's as well the outside world there. And here you have as well collaborative learning as an ecosystem condition, because it kind of helps you internally as well to shape your knowledge. So in other words, it's a recognition that, what is it, Chestnut? I think parents are always told that the whole village helps you in the rising of your child. Is this a thing? I don't know. There's a chestnut like that. Yeah, and it's the same basically with knowledge and learning. So your broader environment, of course, sets as well the focus point. So what did I have here? So they had abiotic units. So this is kind of where learning utilizers and knowledge management tools are applied. Then you had biotic units. So here you had learning stakeholders and knowledge workers. And so the idea here was that here you kind of embrace the team to learn, yeah, learning utilities. And here you kind of bring people in to kind of learn as part of that, yeah.
Sorry, Rob, I didn't get this abiotic and biotic units. I didn't quite get it.
Yeah, so to be honest, this was kind of their typology. So this is very specific to their paper. So you don't have to remember this.
Okay.
So I think abiotic was learning utilities and knowledge management tools to learn in the team. And here, this was about bringing knowledge workers in. So they brought kind of specialist experts in to do the work. Yeah. So simplified here, you have a designated team, and they recognize that they don't learn something, and then focus on learning. And if I remember correctly, here they kind of brought people in, you know, to fill that gap.
All right, cool.
Yeah, okay, but that went beyond kind of a point with the ecosystem, but it's a good paper actually to start off with. Yeah, so the better actually you are embedded. Yeah, by the way, with the ecosystem, maybe back to the definition. What is better? Is it better to be very interlinked in a knowledge ecosystem, so you are very interconnected, or is that a bad thing for a project?
I think it's good to be interconnected if you're working on a specific project with a specific team. Wouldn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends on the case, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, you have the right point there. So it depends a little bit, yeah. But in general, yeah, if you have a challenging environment or something to figure out, the bigger your network or the bigger your reach, the more likely it is that you kind of get a deeper insight and kind of basically a bigger knowledge ecosystem sounds beneficial. Yeah, but why could a knowledge ecosystem be potentially as well problematic? So when is it bad that everybody kind of knows what you're doing and how you are doing it?
What is bad about it?
Yeah, is it ever bad?
If everyone knows what they're doing, was that the question? Sorry.
So I repeat once again, the other way around. So
yeah.
When is a sophisticated knowledge ecosystem maybe a threat to a project?
When, I don't know, I might.
By the way, Raf, this is not just a question for you as well. If anybody else is kind of on that, then yeah. But yeah, Raf, if you have an answer, go for it.
I think when, again, I don't know if this would be the right answer, but I think when the project is undergoing an unprecedented or an uncertain a situation or an event, an ecosystem needs to be dynamic, and it needs to be and probably needs to intake new information and a learning cycle to be able to I guess face this unprecedented event, and so the ecosystem should probably shift a bit into a more not be internal. It should be like external knowledge and somehow extracting knowledge and cues from the environment. I don't know.
Yeah. So you're spot on. So ecosystem is not just one company, right? You have other companies, and then if you are stuck with something, Raf, you're spot on. You can go into your ecosystem and kind of problematize that, yeah, and say like, look, we are stuck here, guys. You have helped us in the past. Can you help us, or do you know someone that can help us with that? Right, and this is cool. So particular if you have a real challenge, yeah, or something you try to figure out, then this is good to be in a ecosystem like this. But okay, I'll give you a controversial example. Okay, we are all in the Manhattan Project. Does everybody know what that means? So we are building a special device, yeah, to rule the world, and we don't want to share this. Is it now good to be in a knowledge ecosystem? You know, like we have just figured it out, yeah, and then me already writing up here, submitted to publication to my kind of community of practice, like straight away, 1 hour later, 500 people have read it, and they're like, oh, Robert, great idea. Why haven't we thought of this? We try this too. Is this good? What has happened? Is that good or bad? Jeff is not impressed. Okay, why is it not good?
Probably they just keep it by themselves, but not open and share the knowledge amongst, and just to gain more understanding on the knowledge, I guess, because that's where innovation comes, right? Where people start to share knowledge and think of in a different aspect or perspective, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, more concretely. So, by the way, does that make sense with the Manhattan Project? So the Manhattan Project was a nuclear bomb, right? So that was quite a controversial example. So is it good that if we figure something out like this, that I share that? How would you view that as a project manager if I'm your team member?
Robert, are you saying that is it good to share project knowledge, or is it good to share just in that case the knowledge about that Manhattan project?
Yeah, good. So my argument is in general, right? So, but in a project like this, is the intent to share the knowledge?
I guess it's good to share the knowledge, but it's up to the people who receive the knowledge to decide if they want to apply the knowledge or not.
Okay, so in general, yes, I buy into your way. So this is how we learn, right? So by sharing knowledge, and academically, this is the right thing. You actually codify it so people can repeat it and figure it out for themselves, and see like, okay, here's a lead. This idea kind of works. This idea doesn't. But if we build amazing product or service, yeah, or we try to get a competitive advantage, then this is exactly the opposite, right? So this is perceived like knowledge leakage, yeah, and perceived as I don't want to say heresy, but I think you're basically on the red list that if you publish the secret source, yeah, so to speak, from the project, this is normally where everybody gets quite angry with you. But yeah, and then so this is actually the counter driver, right? So here we would think of patenting, but by the way, this is still publishing. That is just IP, right? You claim basically intellectual property of it. And in other projects, and actually I too was in a company like that. So in 2007, 2008, we had some projects in R&D and PepsiCo International. We would not even go for patents because we knew there are multiple ways how you can figure that out. So we would just try to keep it secret. Yeah, and that is not really secret. Actually, in the company, you could get access to it. Yeah, so as an organizational memory, it was there. But for the inter-organizational or the project ecosystem, this was often not codified, yeah, or written down, yeah.
I guess it's an issue of morality as well. For example, if you say you invented the vaccine and you just want to keep it for yourselves, it's a problem of choosing between profit and the health of the community. So I would say, yeah, it depends if you judge it as good or not.
But this is a super context, yeah. So here you're really kind of polarizing the element, yeah, into something that saves lives, yeah. So vaccine, for example, in PepsiCo, it wasn't quite saving lives, so it was a different case. But it's a good framing. So you can come to a point where you may even have a moral obligation, yeah, and you see this, of course, in the famous cases then of the whistleblowers, yeah, or but when you said vaccine, what do you have a case in mind? Is there like a vaccine that is not made available, or?
Oh no, I'm just thinking about the coronavirus and the vaccines that yeah, countries are buying and swapping with each other.
Yeah, good. So from the moral issues, I wasn't aware of any patents that were held back, but there was an outrage. So we had that as well at Monash, kind of, okay, who paid actually for all these virus carriers that are used now for the vaccine? And I say, oh, okay, this has been paid by public purse and is established already for 20 years. And it's like, okay, who is actually manufacturing for whom? And then there was this kind of social contract. that, okay, the wealthier countries pay to develop it, and then it goes to everyone in the globe. And then the moral outrage was that actually now in Europe, they're talking already about booster vaccines, and then half of the world hasn't even got their first vaccine yet. So that was kind of, is that what you meant? So yeah, okay, yeah, and this is problematic. Yeah, so here we are again on the I think path or trail where sustainability has been solved yet. So there are kind of individual interest or one group's interest versus global interest, and they don't always kind of come together in the right way. Yeah. Okay. But that was a good example. Other examples, maybe, to kind of understand a little bit that notion. Okay. Then we may push a little bit on with the framework. So the knowledge ecosystems kind of has competence. So we had kind of organizational outcomes, then the culture, constant context, and strategic intent. Yeah, and yeah, I shouldn't say too much about it. Having worked in knowledge organizations most of my life, the strategic intent is not always what was intended, but okay, that's a different story. Then drivers, and then the elements. So here we have kind of people, process, technology, and content. And then here we have as well the enablers. What is the difference between drivers and enablers?
I guess, for example, if we see Zoom as the enabler of virtual learning, we wouldn't say Zoom is a driver of virtual learning. It's just an enabler. It's technology is an enabler, but the driver of the driver of digital education would be, say, the need to study flexibly, for example. I'd say that would be the difference.
Yeah, or in this case, because campus study is not allowed, right? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, then we have as well networks and communities. What is the difference there? Why do we differentiate a network and a community? What do you think? Are we a network or are we a community? What do you think? I'll take guesses. Yeah.
Probably a community, because I think we're a community as a project. You're talking about the class or the project management, or?
Yeah, both. I think you're spot on. Yeah, so we meet with a designated communal element. Yeah, so it's not just popping in for a topic or to see. So having said that, so you may still have different interests. You do this degree for the next promotion or to diversify your career, or you are generally interested in the topics, or you are. But by the way, they are not exclusive. Yeah, but and then you could probably view it as a network, but by our setup, I would think it's more a community. So networks are normally considered where you are inter-organizational, and you kind of, for example, professional networks are considered often a network. But then you have, ironically, for example, special interest groups that may become a community. Yeah, so kind of challenging definitions. But yeah, it's kind of the origin and home space, I guess, versus how you're connecting. Yeah. Yeah, then we have as well the champions and advocates. So that is another element in the standard. And they kind of ask us again to do what we do as project managers, to map, build, and operationalize cycle. So, well, that's the cycle. So map, build, operationalize. And they kind of see that as an enabler game. So mapping context and culture for project you have worked on, ask yourself what opportunities and constraints for activating knowledge, and what is the existing knowledge ecosystem, what are knowledge gaps, people, process, technology, and content. So looking at those categories, and is the organization stand alone, connected, networked, or adaptive? Okay, so those are actually the question. Do I have the example? No. Okay, maybe we do this as an exercise. Okay, let's do that quickly for a break. I maybe do breakout rooms, and I want you to, wait, we are 9 people. Oh, we can probably just do it by shouting in. So I want you to think back of a project that you have worked on. But by the way, even the master's projects would be a cool example, because I have a feeling that some of you have probably worked more in a in a networked approach, and others really worked in a community approach. But then it gets kind of controversial once we come to the gaps. So yeah, maybe take a past project that you have worked on and think about it. So what are the opportunities and constraints for the activating of the knowledge? Yeah. So did you all activate it? Or is there maybe something, think about it a little bit more personal, where you're holding back with something, or was there something that made you kind of not share your insights and knowledge on this? What is the existing knowledge ecosystem? So was there some? So so of course, if you go with Monash, Raf has already kind of unfolded this a little bit. And what are the knowledge gaps? So people, process, technology, and content. And is the organization more standalone, connected, networked, or adaptive? So did you get stuck and somebody said like, I have, I don't know, this uncle, or I have my granddad, he can help me, or grandma. Actually, where did I go? I don't know. But anyway, something like that. Yeah, and that enabled it. Yeah. Okay, maybe think about it for a minute or so, and then we see if anybody had a solution to share here. Okay, does anybody have a project in mind that they're happy to share?
Maybe you'd want to share your story first, Rob.
Oh, me, myself? Or Archie, yeah?
So yeah, I'll share my experience. So when I was working for a private contractor, construction contractor, so usually I joined as a junior engineer.
Oh,
So for me to grow to a planning engineer, it was a huge step. Like uh, nobody has given me like proper data or information within the company, like how the previous projects were planned or scheduled, like even the cost related data. So it was quite challenging for me to establish the data and then getting the proper optimum values for the organization to be more profitable. So it was definitely a challenging because in construction, there isn't any transparency uh, within the departments, because people don't often share information because they feel like if they share information with more people, their jobs will be at risk.
yeah.
So yeah, so that is what I felt like in construction. It's totally different when compared to other industries.
Yes. This is a good example, yeah. So in a way here, yeah, you had the main constraint was actually the setup, right? So the hire and fire culture. So in a way, yeah. So the sad thing is that once you come to a more regional planning function, even in construction, they actually often have very sophisticated catalogs, you know, and everything. But on the project level, you're right. It's often particular graduate engineers are often left to reinvent a lot of the tools. But by the way, often doing a better job and reinventing as well how the work is done in the company. But it's painful because you often have to do it from scratch and your extended networks to kind of have a start there. So how did you do it? Did you start calling around to the subcontractors asking for quotes? And
yeah, so I was doing more desktop research and getting data from internet and understanding, like I've made some friends from in other companies and got a bit of experience on how they're quoting what's optimum value to get the lowest bids.
okay. Yeah, so in your case, it was really kind of, I guess, a network that kind of was a supporting element. Yeah.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. What would you say? It was a knowledge ecosystem, or was it rather hindered by the culture?
Maybe it's the culture, I would say, not the ecosystem. Maybe the entire industry's culture must be changed to have a smooth, transparent communication. See, once, even when I left the company, there wasn't any data transfer like to tacit knowledge. Like I didn't share my information to anyone. So it stayed with me. So whenever a new person is going to come in that role, he has to go through the same loop again.
So what would have been a way for you to hand on this knowledge?
Maybe we can build a community and share knowledge in that.
Yeah, or even an exit interview or something like that, right? So there would be a handover.
Yep. That can be an option. Yeah,
very good example. Thank you, Archie. Where do you think it fell most down? By people, right? So it's quite grim, actually. Where did the knowledge gap come from? People, culture.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of gap within the people culture.
Yeah, and I guess the processes are not set up for continuous improvement or transparency, right? That is the other element. It's a big issue. Yeah, but as you heard as well earlier from my example, we had two even on very big projects that that someone told me that they have tacit knowledge in the drawer. What? which was a program effectively for the last construction project. Yeah, anyway.
Maybe at a main contractor level, I mean, at a EPC level, the information shared is like good, but at a lower level, lower tier, like subcontractors and the data is really hard to get and share.
Yeah, and it's hostile. So you even the contractors have issues. So their design information is handed over as an object. Yeah, so you get a drawing, and then you have to pay extra if you want the digital copy, which then out of pride they don't do, and then there's a poor engineering student having to redo the design. So yeah. I'm laughing about it. It's actually not funny. It's basically an adversarial relationship because they are pushing the price so low that everybody tries to reduce their cost to a maximum.
Yep.
Okay, super example. Anybody else? Another example? Okay, but this was very good. Thank you, Arju. I'm again stuck. Yeah, so there is as well the building experience and linkages, right? So that was another item. So that is translating a map into action. Yeah, and well, it's you probably recognize a lot from project management. Introduce a build phase that you are building now the knowledge ecosystem or your support functions, the processes. Allowing as well knowledge management to evolve and to actually be adapted to the needs of your team and your members. Select enablers, then pilot projects, and this is very important because you want to have a focus point for iterative learning and to have a conversation around it, how you can improve it. And then build organizational forms and structures that can last, maybe for your project or as well in your permanent organization that can be continued and handed over. Communicate as well knowledge interventions. So often those go unnoticed. So what Archie just explained there, he actually built a knowledge asset, but this often goes unnoticed and unannounced, and hides in a parallel life. Create as well champions and advocates, maybe for sharing and using this, and build organizational competencies to actually recognize it and identify and manage resistance to change. So this is again our stakeholder management strategies, right? Ongoing linkages and outcomes should be as well captured, communicated, and of course made visible, right? So to kind of make a case. Now I think this is actually the second last one. So I can't even say it. Operationalize initiatives and capabilities. So shift the focus from experimenting and building to operationalizing. Then as well operationalize knowledge, pilots, competences, and mandates. And capitalize the brands to communicate objectives and benefits and value, of course, and ongoing viability of initiatives and capabilities. So it's if you want to succeed with this, it's important you kind of as well establish kind of cases for why this is important and how that actually impacted if you achieved like improvements. And in some industries, so particular Archu, what you described, some cultures can be quite hostile to systems like this. So then it's actually quite hard to make a case for this. Now, when it comes to the enablers, there is a kind of list as well of actions. So some of those we are quite familiar with, like reflection or change management, right? This is our bread and butter as project managers, but as well the after action reviews. So a lot of those elements have been kind of integrated into project management. But so for example, critical incident technique, did you have those? Whereas GROW or DURO?
I don't think so, Robert. We didn't have it.
so critical incidents that kind of led to an outcome, or so the backtracking, you know, what needs to succeed so we can get there? No, we haven't done that. Okay, so maybe we do this on day 2 or 3, because this is quite cool. This is as well where you allow yourself to kind of more dynamically set the milestones, because you understand what needs to go first and what alternatives may be. So this is actually a fun. Oh, have you done the fishbone diagram? No.
Nope.
No. Okay. Okay. So we have some fun workshop activities there to come. So there's a list of actions, and there are as well processes kind of recognized as elements, right? And they shouldn't really surprise. So for example, business process mapping and redesign. Yeah, so that was a recognition to kind of focus, set the focus right. So are the stages actually representing what we need to succeed? Yeah? And that means then as well that you can, of course, redesign project lifecycle. So, for example, if we have a system and we need to see that it really works, and we may want to pilot it or test it and validate that it fits the purpose. And we can, of course, do that as well with a process model. Yeah, so enter an additional stage where we just focus on that. Content management, document management, we have that. Information and knowledge auditing, knowledge mapping. What is knowledge mapping? Does anybody know this? So yeah, Lynn?
Is it who knows what in an organization?
Yeah. So there's a phone book approach or the wiki approach. They're kind of they have different purposes, but it's a notion of tracking people against knowledge areas, and the phone book approach was a traditional one. So this is what we had as well in Volvo. They really had a phone book of knowledge areas and experts, and they had even extended that to their local universities and other companies. So for example, often there were manufacturers, that knew how certain manufacturing parts were set up and how the machine works behind it and things like that. Narrative management this is a little bit more advanced. So this is kind of creating as well a narrative and being involved in fabricating this. This is where play theory. So it goes in a similar direction like game theory, but play theory is kind of a way of looking how things play out and considering how you can steer that. Social network analysis is more or less what it says on the tin. So taxonomies to benchmark and compare, quantify, how things happen. And then as well kind of technology integration, communication and knowledge sharing, discovery and creation, and managing repositories. So this is quite a hefty one. But in simple terms, the infrastructure and IT systems that work and that kind of produce better outcomes, to kind of monitor that as well and systematically integrate that into your practice, right? So that is again on the process side. And then on the people side, you have champions, advocates, communities of practices or interest, knowledge literacy, knowledge leadership. Yeah, so by the way, in my mind, this overlaps quite heavily between champions and advocates. Then learning and development, and then meetings and share fairs. So at the moment, actually, this is very fashionable here in Australia. So to have share fairs or agile workshops where you have kind of topics that you kind of propose yourself, and then there's a facilitated workshop to look at particular knowledge gaps. This kind of comes from the Maker movement. So we have that as well in engineering, our new smart manufacturing hub. We have actually design spaces that are literally designed for having that set up. So I hope you guys can use those too, maybe by the closer to the end of this year when COVID allows. Mentoring and coaching, networks and communities. So we had that already. And then as well, the art and the affair of storytelling. Why? Oh yeah, that is probably what you did have. Was why is storytelling so good? Why is it not better to just make a bullet point list with content? Yeah.
Maybe you can have more experiences and details.
Yeah.
You can elaborate on particular details. For example, like technical clarifications or commercial clarifications of a project can be easily narrated instead of just saying this is what it is.
Yeah, it goes in the right direction. Yeah, very good. Yeah, Lynn?
So just thinking stories are easier to remember than just facts and data and information, plain information.
Yeah. Both as very good. Yeah. So I was just wanting to add with Lynn. Oh yeah. Wait, Rashi, go first. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. I think the difference is that when it's in the form of storytelling, you're probably narrating it, and it's not really formal or professional as such. It doesn't really have a much of a. It's like it just fits into your head. Like for example, there are some people who like to memorize maybe some part of paragraphs or theories from a book in the form of a song. Like I've seen some people doing that. Like they kind of memorize it in the form of a song, because for them it's a way of narrating it, and it's easier for them to, like, they capture it easily instead of me just showing it in bullet points or forms. So yeah,
you're spot and that makes me doubt my whole PowerPoint slide deck now, but yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, so it's the notion that first of all, we learn in narratives by association. Lynn, you're spot on. It's emotional. It's easier to interlink. Yeah, so we are more likely to memorize. Oh yeah, there was a story, and what were the elements? Yeah, and Archie, you're right. It's additional context. It's normally so that it's normally as well not just a story written down as in content. It's normally a story being conveyed to someone. So it's dialogical. So it goes back and forth, which means you kind of pick up the clues of what somebody understands and where they need further clarification. Yeah. Yeah, very good. Oh, and I got another chat comment. And examples and scenarios. Yeah, very, very good. Yes. Okay. So that was kind of what they envision as enablers. Yeah. Oh, okay. And we are back. So then we had still some left. And here we are back as well at your assignment. So when it comes to operationalizing initiatives and capabilities, this is where evaluating and measuring comes in. Yeah. And here the interesting part is here we find the indicators. And I was a little bit disheartened, but as a project ecosystem, that is a fair point. So as at a project ecosystem level, yeah, artifacts and activities and cultural behaviors are of course just indicators. But here we have as well the other elements that we discussed earlier. So you have intellectual capital or intellectual property being maybe registered, so possibly as well artifacts. And you can then evaluate and measure those, right? So behaviors and interactions and implementation and effect of knowledge initiatives. So do you generate more? But this is of course quite flat, yeah? Just because you have, so you have to be careful how you're measuring this. And then the using element is as well there, the knowledge management indicators, benchmarking, intellectual capital maybe as well, if that is a driving element for the use, right? Then this is, well, so benchmarking is a generic one, and as well the indicators, but intellectual capital is of course a cumulative notion. So if that is what you are aiming for, yeah. Yeah. Actually, I have a case example with NASA afterwards in my Volvo case. So I'm actually tempted to run a little bit quicker through that. Then we had the reflecting element as well. So that was historically offered strategic alternatives from explicit to tacit knowledge, defined as an object as well as a flow. So transdisciplinary, and then future focused. That was kind of complexity, innovation, creative economy, sustainability, global culture, technology. So that could be kind of drivers for reflecting in this context. And then I tried to kind of put this together as a model so you can see a little bit the dynamics. So I think high level, I just wanted to summarize the standards a little bit by kind of noticing so that actually it's my, yeah, here. The knowledge management processes are kind of the driver, yeah. But if you look at it, they're applied to technological context, and we use it heavily, right, to support and push as well with the yeah, I wanted to say just organizational memory, but it's of course more, right? So it's kind of information and communication technologies that enable this process. And then you have kind of the social context, right? That is maybe vision, promotion, and direction you want to go, and formal and informal structures, value beliefs based on collaboration, trust, change, learning, and knowledge sharing. And then as well, learning before, during, and after the individual and group levels that kind of drive basically the different elements of the knowledge management process. Yeah, and that is probably one of the best, well, it's one of the kind of ecosystems that was a really good summary. It's a little bit patchy, so you've seen there are more dimensions to it, but for our purpose, I think that is a really good overview. Okay, yeah, that now comes my case study. Any questions at that point? Sorry, this was quite a long theoretical run. I stop as well to, and any questions?